gate, you succeed because you rally the troops around you, including having well-behaved children, because at the end of the day, if they're going to be spoilt and monstrous, you're not going to get on with what you need to do. So on that, note, we're going to hand over to a very important panel. The next panel has been deliberately chosen around the areas of philanthropy and giving back, because that was one, again, a very common thread across all the essayists, all the contributors, people who believed in giving back, whether through the jobs they do and the way they conduct those, or indeed with the special interests they have outside of the workplace, where they give of themselves, their time, their money, and indeed their management and brilliance. So on that note, thank you all, and I shall hand over to the next panel.
We'll just take... If you could remain seated, we'll just take half a minute to change the panel. Session, Thoughts on CSR, Philanthropy and Making a Difference, shall be moderated by Shweta Rajpal Kohli, Economic Affairs Editor, NDTV. Shweta needs no introduction. A well-known anchor, she regularly hosts business shows and anchors primetime news bulletins. And she has won several awards for excellence in journalism. Can I call upon Mrs. Neeta Buchra, past president, to come up on stage and felicitate Shweta? Shweta, you were not here, but we don't give bouquets. We plant trees, and we've planted this lot in Sundarbans in your names. Right. Could I call upon our National Treasurer, Anuja Narayan, to come up and give the certificate to Mirai Chatterjee, Social Worker and Coordinator, SEVA. Mrs. Ritu Vadera, Member Governing Body, could I request you to come up and felicitate Ms. Rupa Kurva, Partner, Omdiar Network.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Could I request Mrs. Suniti Abbey to come up on stage and give the green certificate and memento to Shaheen Mistry, Chief Executive Officer, Teach for India. Mrs. Anjana Somani, may I request you to come up and felicitate Sudha Pillai, former Union Labour Secretary. Anjana Somani is a past president. Sangeeta Jain, Chairperson Ludhiana, has come all the way from Ludhiana. Could I request you to come up and felicitate Ms. Vijay Lakshmi Iyer, Member Finance and Investment, IRDAI. Can I call upon Rati Dhandhania Mundre, who's chairperson, Bangalore chapter, to come up and felicitate Ms. Vinita Rai, former Revenue Secretary. I would like to request our National President, Archana Garodia Gupta, to felicitate Sandhya Sethi, who has been kind enough to have this lunch organized for us today and is a governing body member of FLOW. I'm now handing over to Shweta to take on the session.
Thanks very much. And many thanks to FLOW for having me as part of this very special panel discussion. I think the topic of the discussion is what makes it even more special: CSR, philanthropy, and making a difference. And let me open by actually sharing what research has really been pointing to. And it's important for all of us here in this audience to know some of these facts. Several research literature that you read will actually tell you that women make much better philanthropists than men. Not only are women more committed to corporate social responsibility, they actually end up doing a much better job of it. I'll actually open today's panel discussion by citing what legendary investor Warren Buffett actually said in an interview to the Fortune magazine. He was asked a very pointed question as to whether he would agree to donate all of his fortune or most of his fortune to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to the Gates Foundation, if Melinda Gates was not a part of it. And he actually took some time to answer that, and he said, I'm not sure I'd do that. I'm not sure about what the answer to that would be. But he went on to add that, you know what, Melinda Gates makes Bill a much better decision maker. He also said that it's true, Bill Gates is smart as hell, but it is Melinda. If you look at the whole picture, then Melinda is even smarter than Bill Gates. In fact, Bill Gates himself was asked this question, that would he be part of the Gates Foundation if Melinda Gates decided not to do it? And he said, I'm not sure I'd do as much of it, and it would be no fun doing it without Melinda. The reason I'm starting by talking about this is because it's important to know how much women are doing in the area of philanthropy, in the area of giving, in the area of corporate social responsibility. Just another figure which is quite startling is that if you look at all the Fortune 500 companies, 80% of those on the boards of Fortune 500 companies are actually men. And I'm sure some of these statistics were discussed in the session before this one. But if you look at the non-profit sector, 3/4 of the leaders of the non-profit sector are actually women. And nearly half the CEOs of NGOs are women. Now that in many ways explains why women are better philanthropists, why women are better with corporate social responsibility, why women are better givers in many ways. So we've got a fantastic list of panelists with us here, people from all walks of life, whether it is the corporate world, whether it is government, whether it's people who work with the social sector. And that's why it's very important to get this kind of 360-degree view from everybody here as to what needs to be done to make sure we can take this forward. We can make sure more and more women leaders are becoming better at both corporate social responsibility as well as philanthropy. The introductions have been done, so let me go straight off by getting Shaheen Mistry, someone who in many ways has been a social crusader, who is called a dream catcher in the book that we're all discussing here today, to share with us her experiences and to tell us if women actually make better philanthropists, or are we just pushing forward stereotypes once again? Shaheen.
Thank you. I'm actually just going to share a story that's top of my mind from last night. So at 10 o'clock last night, I was at Mumbai airport with the family of one of our kids who has just got into the United World College and is flying off to Italy. It was a massive milestone in my own life because this little girl, Priyanka, came in to teach for India from a very, very troubled background. Her father is in jail for life. Her father then escaped, married 4 women, had 7 children. So she's grown up having nothing. And yet this child was at the airport on her own, very worried about whether she'd be overweight because she didn't have the money, and she was heading off for a new life in Italy. And I thought about that, and the reason I'm telling you this story is because my one biggest learning has been that I don't know what will happen to Priyanka and where she will take her life. But I will tell you one thing. What I felt last night at that airport, what I got back from that experience of being a small part of her life, giving a little bit to her, cannot be measured by anything else. And so I'm not an expert on whether women or men are better philanthropists, but my belief in the last 25 years has been the more we give, and we don't even understand our capacity to give, the more we really change ourselves.
Shaheen, if you could also quickly share with us why you decided to do what you're doing, and a little more about Teach for India, what the organization does and what drove you into it.
So I think, in a simple form, I'm trying to make sure that every child in the country has the opportunity to be sitting where you're sitting today. Like literally. Every girl should be able to apply and be part of FICCI. Not basic education, a little bit, but the opportunity is to be their greatest. Because I believe that if every child in our country becomes his or her greatest, our country will be radically, fundamentally different. So that's really what we're trying to do at Teach for India. We're trying to build a force of young people who will work tirelessly across every aspect of society. Politics, business, education, but for only one thing, to make sure that every child in the country gets an excellent education. And the way they do that is they go into the most needy classrooms. I was in one this morning just before here in an MCD school, and they go into those MCD schools and schools around the country, and they say, that most struggling child, can that child have the opportunity one day to be the next president of India? You know, and that's the kind of crazy belief that we have as a Teach for India family, and I think we won't rest until all of us together have made that happen for our country.
Thanks, Shaheen. That's truly making a difference, and that's a large part of what we're discussing today, making a difference. Mirai Chatterjee, if I could get you to build on what Shaheen has really said, the fact that it's important that each one of us make our lives count. We've been fortunate. We've come and we've managed to achieve positions. We've managed to achieve a lot. Why is it so important for women to have that feeling of making a difference, of making it count?
Well, my experience is largely with women at the grassroots level, and a couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, in our over 40 years of experience, poor women make the best paymasters. I remember in every crisis, without even suggesting it, people gave their daily wage or gave whatever they could. Whether it was after the earthquake in Gujarat, whether it was the floods in Jammu and Kashmir far away, or more recently in Nepal, nobody had to be told. So in a way, this is part of, I think, still our traditional culture, the culture of self-help, the culture that Gandhiji always reminded us, that local communities coming together, supporting each other, the solidarity, which still in many parts of the country we find. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And the other issue about giving back, I think what we've learned all these years is that we do it together. It's the sisterhood. It's not just individual women. Individual women maybe like Shaheen or myself who have had opportunity in education. That's different. But coming together, shoulder to shoulder, building the sisterhood, building the bridges. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm here. Because I think the whole idea of CSR, while it's good that there's a law and so on, actually we know from our experience in India that top-down things don't usually work very well. What it amounts to is we need to change our hearts and minds, join hands together, and it's not just about the money. It's about the money, but it's also about sharing experiences, building bridges, pooling our resources, pooling our experiences, mentoring, and a whole lot more.
Great. I'd like to take forward what you've said about the whole top-down approach, the fact that there is this spirit of sisterhood, or there is the spirit of giving, and giving in many ways we would believe is part of the Indian nature. It comes to Indians naturally. Yet, when it comes to the figures that we in India have on corporate social responsibility, those are absolutely shameful numbers. So much so that the government has had to step in and say, you know what, we need to make it mandatory. We need to make it compulsory for organizations of a certain size to contribute 2% of their profits to corporate social responsibility. And even then, what's harder for companies to do is to find those activities. So on one hand, India perhaps has the largest number of NGOs. So if you look at the social sector, we've got a very, very vibrant social sector, but corporates simply don't seem to find enough projects or ideas on how they can make a difference. Perhaps I'd like to get Sudha Pillai to talk here a little about the need to have compulsory CSR. Why is it that India needs to enforce it in terms of making it a law, making it mandatory for companies to invest 2% of their profits in CSR activities?
Well, actually, now it's a done deal. The corporate social responsibility is actually a legal requirement. And I'm on the board of some companies, and I find that they get enthused, actually, when you get into the entire sector and you begin to see the kind of difference you can make, they get very